kind of doing what we did yesterday, but combining the last couple of days. So to write a linear equation that passes through 2 points, remember we can label any 2 points x1, y1, and x2, y2. We can use the slope formula followed by the point slope formula. So if we're finding our slope, m is equal to y2 minus y1 to find our change in y, divided by x2 minus x1 to find our change in x. And then once we've found our slope, we're going to plug that into our point slope formula. So we end up with y, and remember we take the opposite of one of the y values. Remember, you're just going to choose 1 point. Don't take the y from this one and the x from this one. That will screw it up. Is equal to the slope, which we just found out, times the quantity of, so we're going to open our parenthesis, and then x minus x1, or the opposite of x1. So again, today we are going to practice putting final answers in slope-intercept form. This really means we have to solve for y after we have put it into the slope formula and the point slope formula. Hopefully, finding our slope has become more automatic because we practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, and we are tested on it. And we practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, and then we are tested on it. And then this week we've practiced and practiced and practiced. So remember, we're going to, we can label these if that's easiest to start with. x1, y1, x2, y2. And then you're going to take y2, so -1 minus y1, which is 7. All over x2, which is 1, minus a -3. So as I'm simplifying the slope here, I have -8 divided by 4, which is -2. And then I have to plug our slope and one of these points. So you can decide which point you're putting in. If you want to stick with the x1, y1, you can. I feel like here, because these have smaller numbers, I would probably go that route, but it's totally up to you. So I would just be sure you're kind of sticking to one of the points. Like I said, don't take y from one and x from another. They've got to come from the same point. So I would write y, and then the opposite of my y value, so +1, is equal to my slope, which was -2, open parentheses, x, and then the opposite of my x value. So I believe I'm gonna guess, I could be wrong. Yes, after these couple pages, you can go back to just leaving them in point slope form, but we're gonna practice solving for y because it's good practice. We've got to distribute this. So we have y plus 1 is equal to -2x times x is -2x. -2x times -1 is +1. And then we're simply subtracting 1 from both sides. So really we're left with y equals to -2x. So this line goes through the origin because our y-intercept is 0, 0. All right, so typically this is where you're going to be able to stop, but it's good practice to know that to solve for y, we have to distribute to get rid of the parentheses, and then we have to get rid of the constant that's tied to y. All right, so again, we're going to find the slope. We're going to take y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So this is really 3. This is really 9. We do need to simplify. We can divide them both by 3 to get a slope of 1/3. So now we're gonna pick a point. So if you want, you could pick this point. I'm just gonna pick this point. It doesn't matter which one as long as you keep it consistent again. So we're gonna say y, and then the opposite of the y value is equal to the slope times x and the opposite of the x value of the point we've chosen. Okay, so typically we could stop here. This is in point slope form, so it works as a linear formula. But if we're solving for y, we're going to distribute. Remember when we're multiplying by anything and a number, we can just write it next to the letter. I said anything in a number, I meant anything in a letter. We can write it next to the letter. When we're multiplying by a fraction, we're multiplying by what's on top, which isn't going to change it at all because it's 1, and dividing by what's on the bottom. So -3 divided by 3 is -1. And then we just have to get rid of this constant by taking the opposite of it from both sides. So we're left with y equals 1/3 x minus 5. All right. So again, we jump right into finding the slope. We're taking y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So here we're adding 1, is that right? So we end up with -6. Nope, -5. What am I doing? I wanted it to be -6 because I wanted it to be even. -5 divided by 2 is going to be our slope. That's kind of ugly. I'm going to pick this point this time. So I'm going to say y, and then the opposite of my y value is equal to -5/2 times x minus the opposite of my x value of the point I've chosen. So here I've got y plus 1. When I'm distributing, I'm writing my slope next to x, and then I'm thinking of this as 2/1. So I'm dividing it by 2, which is 1, and then multiplying it by 5, which is 5. Negative times a negative is positive, so be careful there. And then I'm simply solving for y. Y is equal to our slope times x plus 4. All right. So remember, once we get past this page, we're just going to be working into our point slope form. So we're going to take y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. This is nice. 5 minus 6 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. My slope is 1. Oh, that's going to make things really simple then. So I have y. First, I got to pick a point. You want to do 1, 6 or 2, 5? Any preference? No preference? I'll pick 2, 5 then. So -5. Make sure you're taking the y value. You got to know which is which. Times the slope, which is just 1. And then x minus the x value. So here, this is essentially going away because 1 times anything is that anything. So we're left with y minus 5 equals x minus 2. If I add 5, I'm left with y equals x plus 3. All right. So here I'm going to say y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So -6 over +8 is really -3/4, because we can divide them both by 2. And then we're picking one. I'm going to pick this one. So y plus 5 is equal to my slope times the quantity of x minus 0. So really it's just y plus 5 equals negative 3/4 x. And then if we subtract 5, our y-intercept is negative 5. So y equals negative 3/4 x minus 5. So y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. We're really adding here. We have 15 divided by 5, which is 3. So pick a point. Doesn't matter which one. Y minus the y value is equal to the slope times x minus the x value. We've got to distribute first. So y minus 7 equals 3x minus 6. And add 7 to both sides to get y by itself. So y is equal to 3x plus 1. We can glean a lot of information if we can do these things. On page 21, we're going to practice those together, but we're just going to stop when we get to the point slope form because I feel like that helps us. Hi. I'm ready to take the test tomorrow. All right, yep, during Trojan time. So I feel like you do need to know that, but it's just extremely time consuming. So if you want to practice that, we can do that. But for now, we'll leave it at the point slope form. We can always go back and continue that on, right? So first we're finding the slope, right? 2 minus a negative 14 all over 3 minus a negative 9. So that leaves us with 16 divided by 12. So if I divide them both by 4, I have 4/3 as my slope. And then I'm just going to pick one of these, whichever looks nicer. So y minus 2 is equal to 4/3 times x minus 3. So this is the way you can leave it if it asks you for a linear equation or point slope form. If it asks you for slope intercept form, you do need to solve for y, okay? So here we're finding the slope. Again, we're going to take -1 minus a -3 because we're finding our change in y values. Our change in x, we're taking -4 minus a -6. -1 plus 3 is 2. -4 plus 6 is also 2. So our slope is really just 1. So we can pick any point you decide. Y plus 1 is equal to 1, so you can put it there, times x plus 4. We're always taking the opposite of the x and y values when we put it into our point slope form. All right, so here we're finding the slope. 2 minus 7 on top, 6 minus a -4 on the bottom. We have -5 on top and 10 on the bottom. So if we divide them both by 5, we have -1/2. We'll pick this one for fun. It's a little bit more challenging because the opposite of a positive is negative. We throw in our slope, and then the opposite of negative is going to be positive. So do be careful with your signs. Here, we're still following our slope formula. Y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So -10 divided by -2 is +5. And then I like this point, it's nice and easy, right? Y minus the y value is equal to 5, open parenthesis, x minus the x value. Does that make sense? All right, try these next few, then we'll go over it, and then you will be responsible for pages 22, 23, and 24. So 23 and 24 does tell you to find the slope intercept form, and I know that's going to take more time. So I'm guessing we'll probably have a lot of extra work time as we're working through reviewing for the quiz and getting ready for that tomorrow and Monday, and then Tuesday we'll take the quiz, because I do want you to practice going from slope intercept, point slope form to slope intercept form. So try these few, we'll go over them in just a second. A lot of this stuff is practiced so much so it can become automatic, so keep plugging away. All right. Can't leave every day. Gonna play a little bit of catch up and hope that it's helpful. Yep. If you have something different because you use the other point, that's totally fine. Just make sure your signs are correct. Like you're taking the opposite of that y value and the opposite of that x value. Sign. All right, so simply try those the same way on page 22. You can put these in point slope form. If you've forgotten what it is, it's helpful. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So those should be much quicker than 23 and 24 because here they're asking you for slope intercept form. So you have to solve for y unless it's giving you your y intercept, and maybe you can find m using that. So anything where x equals 0, they're giving you your y-intercept. So like for number 1 here, for instance, you could just find the slope. If you're looking for your slope, you have the change in y, oops, minus a -2. Careful there. And then -1 minus 0. So -2 divided by -1 is 2. If 2 is your slope and -2 is your y-intercept, you should be able to put it in y equals mx plus b without having to solve for y. So 2x minus 2. Where else? So you can go through and quickly figure out where you have a y-intercept. Do we have a y-intercept in all of these? We sure do. So these will help you find B. So you just need to find the slope to plug in to your y equals mx plus b. So these actually aren't horrible. It'd probably be easier if we marked the ones where you have to solve for y. So on the back here, you're going to have to solve for y. So start in point, slope, and then solve for y. Here and anywhere else here. And the last two. Does that make sense? You're kind of finding 3 different ways. You're just putting in point slope form after you've found your slope. So you're always starting with finding your slope. Here you're putting in slope intercept form after you found your slope because they're giving you what b is equal to. Same for several of these, but a few of them you do need to find your slope and then use your point slope form to solve for y to change it to slope intercept form. So it's a little tricky. You got to know what it's asking you and what formula you need to use.